So you're booked as an operator, which means on set you're likely to communicate a lot with either an art director, producer, or the director him or herself. Also, you're running and gunning it with a gimbal setup, which means you're mobile and all over the place. Let's say you're also working under the gun, so time is of the essence. So you running back and forth across the set, showing them what you did on playback isn't the preferred option either. Still, they have to be able to monitor whatever you're doing on the fly, but no one, including them, wants them to follow you around while you're running and gunning it. Too much hassle for everybody involved. So a standing cable connection isn't an option either. What to do? Here's the solution for that very problem. So let's go do it. Now, as you've already seen, this setup consists of two parts. Part number one is the operator part, built around the DJI Ronin S gimbal. Part number two is the producer part, built around a simple field monitor. We're gonna start with the producer part first and work our way up to the main rig with the Ronin S. So let's start with Micro Video Village. The centerpiece of Micro Video Village is this Feelworld F5 Pro monitor. It's a simple bang for your buck field monitor that has all the connections that you want. But the cool part about this one especially is it has a inverse NPF battery plate right here. This right here is the receiver unit of the MARS 400S Full HD video transmission system. And on its back is an NPF battery plate. So this is where you would usually put your Sony NPF battery. So this thing fits right there and is automatically supplied with power via the monitor's NPF battery, which is super awesome and convenient. Now this right here is the HDMI output of the video receiver, and we need to connect it to the HDMI in of the Feelworld F5 Plus. We need a full-size male HDMI to full-size male HDMI cable. One of the two ends needs to be right angled. In this case, both of them are, but technically you would need only one end of the HDMI cable to be right angled. Here's why. One end plugs into the receiver unit. Then I'm gonna come around once and then simply plug in the other end into the HDMI input of the Feelworld monitor. Now, if you wanted to splice the signal to another monitor via the Feelworld F5 Pro HDMI output, you couldn't use a dual right-angled cable because if it's right-angled, you're gonna block the second HDMI connection. Since in my case, this is where the signal ends, I don't mind having a double right-angled cable. Now, reason being that this has to be right-angled is pretty simple. Otherwise, the NPF battery would block this connection. This way, it's nice, neat, and sits right in between the video receiver and the NPF battery, so it's additionally secured. Now, before we put all of this onto this little tabletop tripod right here, there's one more step in between. A lot of times the producer is going to sit somewhere and he's going to be able to use this tabletop tripod to just place the whole setup wherever it's convenient for him. But sometimes even the producer needs to be mobile. So in order to make that more convenient, I'm going to attach a grip like this, so when the producer is mobile, it's more convenient for him to hold the whole setup. Now, I settled for this tilter one because it's my newest one and it looks really cool, I think. But basically, you can use any grip as long as it has a NATO clamp as an attachment. The NATO clamp attachment is important because we're going to use this NATO rail from Tilta. The cool thing about this one is it has a thread on the inside, so the screws don't fall out. There's other cheaper ones, like these from SmallRig, for example, but the screws just come undone if they're not used. Since we're only going to use one of them, it is imperative the other one doesn't fall out. Here's why. So I'm only going to use one screw. I'm not going to tighten it completely, and then I'm going to angle the whole NATO rail like this. So the second screw that I'm not using hits the monitor right there. So the whole NATO rail can't move this way. Once that is done, I'm going to finalize this and tighten it securely with the one screw. Preferably, best option, I would use a cage on the monitor and have two sets of screws go into two sets of threads, which would make the whole thing more stable. And then I would use probably an area rosette instead of a NATO clamp to angle the grip. However, as of now at least, there is no cage that perfectly fits this Feelworld F5 Pro monitor. Now it's angled like this, so all we have to do now is put the grip on, lock it, and now it's already at a very convenient angle for viewing. Last but not least, let's put this on the mini tabletop tripod. I'm using a combination here. This is a Moman tabletop tripod, and it's the best that money can buy in my opinion. And on top of that is a Joby Ballhead X, because I'm using this particular QR plate. And I want to use it for this particular reason. It is a wide QR plate. It is so wide, in fact, that right here, this corner blocks the video transmission system, so it can't fall out. It's perfectly secure. And here we go. Done. So this is pretty convenient to carry around for the producer if he can sit down somewhere or has a table near him. And if he needs to be mobile himself, he can just hold it, grab it like this, or just use the tabletop tripod. But this gives him more control, and it's easier for the wrist. If you're doing that all day, that makes a difference. Now the setup for the operator built around the Ronin has 3 parts in and of itself. Part number 1, video transmission. Part number 2, external recorder/field monitor. And part number 3, dual handle setup for the Ronin, which makes this whole gig really work. So let's start with the smallest one, video transmission. Now obviously we're going to start with the counterpart of the video transmission system. It comes with its own custom mount that allows us to translate this 1/4" mount from the bottom to the front of the unit. So this part goes right here, just like this, and is secured via 1/4" screw on the bottom. Make sure it's a secure, tight fit. And now that we have the 1/4" mount on the front of the unit, we can hook up this monitor mount that is a combination of a NATO clamp and a 1/4" screw mount. 1/4" screw mount goes right there. If it hurts your fingers too much, you can always use an Allen wrench to make it super tight. All right, then NPF battery on the back, and this part is already done. Let's put this right there. Next part, Atomos Ninja V. Pretty straightforward, really a go-to option for a small portable external recorder/field monitor. The one thing that is very important here, whenever you're doing run and gun stuff, and with a gimbal setup you're running and gunning a lot, or that's usually what you're doing, you want to make sure all cable connections are secure. Because if the cables catch something and the cables break, that's usually okay. It might hurt, but it's not the end of the world. But if the cable doesn't give and you damage the connector, let's say inside a Ninja, that's 800 bucks. Let's say you damage the connector inside your A7S III, that's 3.5 grand, 4.2 in Germany. So that's no bueno. That's why whenever you're doing run and gun stuff, it's a good idea to secure your cable connections. To do that with the Ninja, I'm using a cage that comes with a cable clamp. I'm using this one from Sony. It's not perfectly machined, at least mine isn't, so there's still some play once the monitor is inside the cage, which I don't like, but it's a bang for your buck option. It's about half the price of, let's say, an 8-sin or a small rig monitor cage, so it's a good option. 2 1/4" screws, one from the top, one from the bottom. Here we go. Lightly tighten at first, and now, as you can see, that thing is still moving a bit. So align it perfectly and then finally tighten the screws. And there we go. Cage is on the Ninja V. This is the cable clamp. 2 inputs, so the clamp needs to be able to take care of both of them. Apply it, but don't finally tighten it yet. So it's on there, but it can still move. Here's why. The dimensions of the end parts of HDMI cables can vary quite significantly. This one, for example, is much thicker than this one. So if you want to use both, the cable clamp has to accommodate for that difference. So before you finalize the position of the cable clamp, plug in the cables that you want to use. And then, based on where they sit, finalize the position of the cable clamp. So if you're using two different HDMI cables, the cable clamp is not going to perfectly align with the cage, but it's positioned exactly right for the specific cables that you're using, so the connection is more secure. Then just tighten these and you're done. Don't kill them, just make sure it's a tight fit. And then this is what this needs to look like. Also, I'm using coiled cables, which I prefer to do when using a gimbal setup, because when you're under the gun and time is of the essence, sooner or later you're going to make a mistake and you're going to catch something. If there's still more give with a coiled cable, it again protects the connectors and your gear. Then last but not least, you already know this one. It's the same monitor mount we used with the video transmission before, NATO clamp and 1/4" screw mount. This time find the top of the Ninja monitor, which in this case is right here, and then use the NATO clamp on the cage, which is awesome because this cage has a NATO rail built in. Align it so it sits in the middle, then close the NATO clamp, and here we go. SSD, NPF battery, second part of the operator setup, done. Alright, final part, 2 side handles for the Ronin S. So let's hook up the tabletop tripod real quick. And now this is what we're left with. These are 2 side handles that attach to the Ronin S via these 2 parts. They're from UURig, and disclaimer, they sent it to me so I could do a setup with them. These side handles really make this whole setup work. And it's a pretty cool accessory for the DJI Ronin S. So here's how those work. These 2 come together using 2 1/4" screws and an Allen wrench. 1, 2, 3 connections, and this one points directly at you once you apply it to the Ronin S. Here's how that looks like. Number 1 goes right here. Number 2 goes right there. Usually I'm not in favor of tightening something like beyond reason, but right here, just freaking make sure it ain't moving. Also, the insides of this clamp are lined with rubber, so you're not going to damage your Ronin S no matter how tight you make this connection. Now that is a secure fit. Now these are the extensions that the handles will attach to, and you have to attach those to the Ronin S. It's pretty straightforward, clamp mechanism and a release pin. So open the clamp, pull the release pin back, and then just slide it onto this attachment right here. Push down a little until the release pin clicks into position. And there we go. Tighten the clamp. Same thing on the other side. Slide it down until the release pin clicks. And tighten. Almost the same with the handles, clamp mechanism, but this time the release pins are on the bottom of the arms. Then, before we put the next one on, we need to hook up the video transmitter. Now we're going to attach this thing like that, with the display flipped. But there's 2 advantages. Number 1, the antennas don't block the gimbal, which would be the case if we installed it like that. And the HDMI cable connection doesn't sit on the outside, but on the inside, in between the transmitter and the gimbal, and is therefore more secure because there's no way to hook up an HDMI cable clamp to this unit. So I secure the connection via its positioning. Just make sure the NATO clamp is open, push in the security pin on the bottom of this extension and slide it, I'd say, somewhere up to here. So it sits in the middle. Next up, monitor. With the monitor, we're going to use the 1/4" mount part of this monitor mount and screw it in right there. Screw it into the 3rd or the leftover attachment. Now, it's just 1 screw, so this could turn. So again, use an Allen wrench to finalize the positioning. Don't just use your fingers, use the wrench to really make it a secure fit. Now, in a perfect world, I would have 2 screws and 2 threads, but as of now I only have the one. So this is how this is going down. And if you use the Allen wrench, you should still get a pretty secure fit. Now this cable right here, which is currently hooked up to the HDMI in of the Ninja, will later on be hooked up to the camera. This cable right here is connected to the HDMI out of the Ninja and is used to splice the signal through to the video transmission unit, so the video signal after it has left the Ninja V is transmitted to Micro Video Village or to the producer, so he can know exactly what you're doing. And this is exactly why we haven't hooked up the second side handle yet, so we can move this back out, plug in the cable, and then move it all the way in. And then hook up the last handle, opening the cable clamp, sliding it in until the release pin clicks. There we go, sliding it back out and tightening it. Alright, operator part and producer part. Let's put a camera on the gimbal and see how well this works. Camera is operational. Look at this guy and his on-set monitor. And there you go. This is the setup. Working. Camera transmits the signal to the Ninja V. Ninja V splices it through to the video transmitter. Receiver receives it and monitor displays it. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, if you found it helpful, please make sure to leave a thumbs up, it's greatly appreciated. Any kind of comment or feedback is welcome and I'll try to answer as quickly as possible. All the tech that I've used in this video is linked in the description, and especially for this one I've created a kit on kit.com, which has all the components including descriptions. So definitely check that out if you're interested. As always, thank you so much for your time, thank you for watching, and hopefully see you again soon.